Okay, so we did letter A already. We did not do letter B or letter C because we didn't really have a good grasp of the unit circle and what it meant for there to be cosines and sines and tangents, and also what the heck are radians and how do you find them. So let's go to any of the pages here. Let's just do this. We'll go zoom in on this one right here. You tell me which one of those is 5 pi over 3, which letter up there represents 5 pi over 3. Talk to your neighbor, State Farm or otherwise.
I want that way. They have to get to 10 pi per 6. It's kind of sus. You only do 5 pi.
Yeah, that's one.
Wait. It's
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. And everything.
Which letter represents 5 pi over 3? That is N. That is N. Okay? Letter N. Now, if you counted in terms of pi over 3s, you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you did not count in that, maybe you counted it pi over 6s. Maybe you went 1 pi over 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pi over 6s. That's the way you did it. But you had to land down here in N. Can you tell me the cosine? What is the x value? 0.5, 1/2, thank you very much. Right. Can you tell me the y value? It's not negative 1/2. Not negative radical 2 over 2. It is negative radical 3 over 2. Right? Okay? I know that those weren't the questions they asked you. They asked you about tangent. Can you tell me whether you think the tangent, the slope of this line is positive or negative? Negative. You should all be saying negative, right? So it's down to the right. Okay? Now, you could go find the y value and the x value and divide them. You probably would change it to multiplication by the reciprocal. Or you could say, hey, this one is negative and it has something to do with this one right here. What is the slope of this one? Well, it sure ain't 1 because we know the slope of this one is 1. It has to be the one that's steeper than 1. What is the one that's steeper than 1? Radical 3. So this has to be negative square root 3. I don't need to do a bunch of math. I do need to understand some of the basics. If you understand quadrant 1, your x's, your y's, your slopes, you can go all over this place, all over this circle. Don't sit there and try to flip to the one page that has everything and say, I'm going to memorize this. Okay, because you will not, and you will get lost. Okay? So, now, why is it better to have a printed circle than me just drawing my own circle right there? It's more accurate, right? Now, if you know that 5 pi over 3, that was the letter N that we had going on there, is down there, hopefully you can tell from even my badly drawn circle that it has something to do with that steeper one, and so this would be negative square root 3. Before we do any more on letter C, can you tell me that secant goes with which of the 3 trig functions? Cosine. So I bet if we can find the cosine of negative 3 pi over 4, who writes these fractions horizontally, for crying out loud? This is ridiculous. Okay? We need to find the cosine of negative 3 pi over 4. So back to our cool unit circle. Whoa. Which one of those is negative 3 pi over 4? Negative 3 pi over 4. Talk to your neighbors. Figure out which letter is negative 3 pi over 4. Yeah, you're right. You're on the right track. Me? No, I'm looking at him count. So far, he's counting right. So you go negative 1 pi over 4. Negative 1 pi over 4 would be in the middle. Negative 2 pi over 4 would be there. Good. That's the right letter. So each letter up there represents that. Okay. Okay, so negative 3 pi over 4 is special K. Thank you very much. Special K. That's right, folks. I don't know that many of you eat that cereal, but special K. All right. So negative 3 pi over 4. We want the cosine of this. Is that the x value, the y value, or the slope? X value, y value, or slope? I want cosine. That's the x value. All right, x value, do you think that this is negative 1/2? No. Do you think it is negative radical 2 over 2? Yes. Yes. Now that's the cosine. I want the secant. We know that the cosine is negative radical 2 over 2. We need a secant. Show me. Show me on the paper. The cosine is negative radical 2 over 2. What is the secant? Maybe. Yeah. But that's your own issue. Well, maybe, yes. I'm just referring to that part. Okay, so cosine, you said that's negative radical 2 over 2, but we want the secant. So the secant of negative 3 pi over 4. Now, some of you probably flipped that thing over, right? 2 over negative radical 2. Oh, by the way, does it matter whether the negative is in the top or in the bottom or in front or not at all? Doesn't really matter, does it? As long as you just don't throw it away. Okay, so we flipped it over, right? You know, it's not really cool in this format, although it is correct. We rationalize it. Now, quick question here. Will you panic if I do this? Will you panic if I do that? Okay, so what's radical 2 times radical 2? Radical 4. And we all know the square root of 4 is 2. So on the bottom, I canceled out 2 and 2. You see that magic? Okay. So we did end up with negative radical 2 as our final. The secant of negative 3 pi over 4 is negative square root 2. Okay. You need a lot more practice with this, which is why I have the Math Excel assignment for you. Plus, you've got problems in the book to work on. But this kind of stuff where you're quizzing yourself on these things, where they are on the circle, and that kind of stuff is absolutely necessary. Okay. Sample 7. This does remind me of Lord of the Rings. Using one trig ratio to find the others. Like one ring to rule them all kind of thing. I don't know. Just came to me. All right, letter A. What are the important things that you notice in the information that you've been given? I wrote out one of them. You should automatically see that since the tangent is less than 0, that means the slope is negative. What else were you told? You were told the sine is 3/7, but I need interpretation. What does that mean? The y value is positive. Y value is positive 3/7. So they have given you enough information to go figure out which quadrant you're in. All right, so let's think about this. The fact that your slope is negative tells me you're in quadrants 2 or 4. But then they go to the trouble of telling me that the y value is positive, so that narrows it down to which quadrant? Quadrant 2. So not down there. It is extremely important that you know which quadrant you're in. Now, if it's going to keep you up at night based on how you draw your triangle, then you can be really specific on how you do this. But if you just want to be generic, we're going to draw a triangle in quadrant 2. I may not be right on this, as far as how steep it is. But I've been told that the sine of theta, which we could actually figure this out, is 3/7. Is it bigger than a half or smaller than a half? It's smaller than a half. Well, guess what? It kind of looks like I am smaller than a half, because if I'd carry this, yeah. Okay, so I'm good. I did the right kind of triangle. Okay, so if they told me that the sine is 3/7, which side should I label 3, and which side should I label 7? 3 is which one? Right, we got opposite hypotenuse, don't we? So 3 and 7. Question for you. Do either of those need to be negative? Take a look at the picture. Do either one of those need to have a negative sign on them? Okay. Is the radius of a circle ever a negative number? No. So the 7, that was kind of a trick question. But based on the picture, does this side have to be negative? No. Give me a reason why. Okay, good. Now, I'll come to you in a second, because you might have a second good reason here. Okay? Because this goes up. Do you see why it's important that you know which quadrant you're in? Yeah. Because it should verify in your mind, yeah, definitely want a positive y value. Right? I'm going up. If this were negative, but this is a positive 3/7. Do you have another reason?
I said it's in quadrant 2.
It is in quadrant 2, so you were going along with the same idea. There's no way I could have a positive 3/7 if one of these was negative and the other one was positive. That's another reason why I know either both of them are positive or So the hypotenuse is always going to be a positive number. If you want to write that down, write it down. The hypotenuse is always positive. It's these other two sides of the triangle that I have to think about. Now, what about that lower edge? How do we find that lower edge of a right triangle? And they all said, Pythagorean Theorem. Yes, you are correct. So we want x squared plus 3 squared equals 7 squared. So if I subtract 9 from both sides, I get x squared equals how much? If I take away a 9 from both sides? 7 squared, take away 9. 40? Right, that's 49, take away 9. Okay? No, I don't care about, simplifying the radical. Okay? That's very geometry-esque. Okay? So, square root 40. We'll just leave it alone. Okay? Should it be labeled square root 40? Why negative square root 40? Which one? Because it wouldn't let it. That's right. Those are all mathematical songs. Right. So negative square root 40. They want me to find cosine and tangent. Cosine theta? What do you got for cosine? Negative radical 40 over 7. Adjacent over hypotenuse. What about the tangent? Negative 3 over radical 40? No, we don't need to waste our time rationalizing. Okay, you can if you want to, though. If it really makes you feel better, then do it. Is it okay if the negative's in the bottom with the radical 40? Yes, right? Because it doesn't matter whether it's in the top or in the bottom or in front. Question?
Odd question. So isn't cosine equal to the x value?
Okay, on a unit circle. On a unit circle. Because you're dividing by 1. Shield your eyes, children, unless you want to know the answer to his question. Okay? Remember how I said don't write this down? Because this has got all these R's in it. Well, this was the non-unit circle stuff. When it becomes a unit circle, cosine is x, sine is y, tangent slope, that kind of thing. It's because of that whole radius being 1. The radius of this particular triangle that we're dealing with was a 7. So it's not a unit circle. Okay? So I guess the major point on this example is not a unit circle. Okay, so that's an important point that you brought up. Okay, letter B. We've been given that the secant of theta is 3. So that's positive. Secant goes with what? Cosine. So if the secant of theta is 3, what's the cosine? The cosine is 1/3. Is that a positive number or a negative number? That's a positive number. That's extremely important that you know that it's a positive. Is that an x value or a y value or slope? That's an x value. So we have a positive x value. That's important. We're also told that the what? Sine theta greater than 0. What are they telling me? What's positive? Are they telling me that the y value or the slope is positive? So my y value is positive. Where in the world are you got to narrow it down to one quadrant where you have a positive x and a positive y. What? Which one? Positive x, positive y. Quadrant 1, thank you very much. Good old quadrant 1. It doesn't really matter how you draw this triangle in quadrant 1 as long as you're connecting it to the closest side of the x-axis, as I have preached and preached and preached to you. Always closest side of the x-axis, never connecting to the y-axis. Which side of this would you call 1 and which side would you call 3? Which one would you call 1 and which one would you call 3? Okay, so the lower edge is 1, that's the adjacent side, and my hypotenuse is 3. Find the other side. And for those of you guessing, maybe I should double check before I say the wrong thing. Yeah, it's not radical 2. I could just see somebody trying that one. I know your Pythagorean theorem here. Come on, Pythagorize. Get more steps in if you Pythagorize in your day. Burn them calories. All right, so several of you are doing your 1 squared plus y squared. So y squared was equal to 8. Or you could put 2 radical 2 if that makes you feel better. Is it positive radical 8 or negative radical 8? Yeah. Good. Positive radical 8 because the picture shows me that the y value is going up. All right, now this particular question said, find the cosine. Duh, didn't we already do that? All right, man, we got half the question done. Then they wanted the tangent. Find me the tangent. Show me, wax on, wax on.
I would only keep 2 and I actually no, I just repair it.
Now, is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with me writing radical 8 over 1?
No.
And isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, I will say that at a party, nobody's going to write it like that. Okay. They're only going to write it like this. However, the red pen of death cannot take anything away from you if you wrote radical 8 over 1, because it's technically correct. Okay? All right. Now, letter C. Cotangent undefined. Ooh. Straight up what? Okay. Cotangent undefined. Okay. And then they also told me that the secant is negative. This is the information they gave me. To have a cotangent that is undefined. Cotangent goes with which trig function? Tangent. What do we know about tangent if the cotangent is undefined? Now, to be undefined means that you have to have something over what? You have to have a number over 0. Now, isn't the tangent the y divided by the x? So that would mean that the cotangent would be x divided by y. So we need a y value of 0. A y value of 0. Okay, people, look at your circle. I need you to tell me all the letters on that circle that you think have a y value of 0. Talk to your neighbors right now. All the places that have a y value of 0 according to that circle.
Straight up. No. Y value equals
Every Anybody a fan of artificial intelligence? AI, yes. A and I are the two places in the circle that have y values of 0. We are talking y values, not x values. So A and I were the two places that we're talking about. So this question is either about the location A, which is what radian measure? What's the radian measure at A? 0. What's the radian measure at I?
6 pi.
At I? Isn't that just 1 pi? Okay.
What, 2 pi?
2 pi would be back at letter A, yes. Okay. So this information about cotangent being undefined either means you're sitting over here or you're sitting over here. Then it tells me this. The secant is negative. Secant goes with what? Cosine. So if the secant is negative, then the cosine is also negative. Right? That means we have to be dealing with this one over here at this other side, right? Because that's the only place that has an x value of negative out of those two choices. Can you tell me what the cosine is at that spot? You told me it was pi. Yeah, folks, we're struggling because we can't draw a triangle. We can't draw a triangle because we're sitting right on the axis. So we will have to revert back to our unit circle. You got a lot of places over here. Anybody know what the x value is over here? -1. Good job. The x value there is -1. Oh, that's right, because we're 1 unit away from the origin moving directly left. The x value is -1. Now they ask me for the tangent. The cotangent was undefined, folks. We know we're dealing... Look at that line right there and tell me what the heck the slope is. 0. 0. Right, I even did the little capital Z thing for you to remind you. So yes, I know sometimes, most of the time you can draw a triangle, sometimes you can't. That will throw you back to the unit circle, because you'll be dealing with one of the axes. You'll be sitting directly on the axes. So that's how we handle that one. Okay, now this is not a theorem you have to memorize. What they're getting at with this particular example is, it doesn't matter how many times you go around the circle, it matters where you land. Okay? I probably wouldn't pick as large a numbers as these, okay, if we're going to say without a calculator. But let's think about 57,800. And you'll notice that I did 800 and not 801, right? Now, where does 57,800 land? That's a lot of pi over 2, isn't it? Right? Because you got 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, right? Every multiple of 4 is another trip around the circle, right? If I knew how many times 4 went into 57,800, I could decide whether it landed here or here. Does 4 go into 57,800? Don't grab that machine. Now, I would like to remind you what they taught me when I was in elementary school about single-digit division. If I want to know if 4 can go, does 4 go into 5? How many times? 1. With how much left over? 1. How many times does 4 go into 17? 4 times with how much left over? How many times does 4 go into 18? With how much left over? How many times does 4 go into 20? With nothing left over. So it went in evenly. 4 went in evenly, which means when we went around as many times as we did, we landed right there. And so now if you want to add 1 more pi over 2, where will you land? If you've been going around and around and around and around for a long time, folks, but you ended up landing here, and then you're going to add 1 more pi over 2, where does that push you? To the very top. So answer the question. What is the sign at the top of the circle? Do I want an x value? Do I want a y value? Or do I want a slope? I want a y value. So what's the y value at the top? 1. Done with the question. It doesn't matter how many times you go around the circle. Yes, I probably wouldn't pick as large numbers as these. It matters where you land. That's the whole goal of these questions. I probably won't even, I don't even know if I want to have one of those on the test. But it's about where you land. I would definitely pick smaller numbers, because it's about where you land, not about
how many trips around the circle you go.